Hey everybody, so this is Kendrick from Providence Tarot. I just wanted to give you guys a video, just kind of discussing Cancer season and what it means and what I think it means and what it kind of you know, makes me feel, right? Feelings. I am a Cancer moon. My Cancer moon is at 29 degrees, so it's a critical degree of the Cancer moon. The moon is at home in Cancer, and just as the moon evolves and fluctuates and changes, so does Cancerians, people who are born under the sign of Cancer, and also people who might have one of those personal planets in Cancer, or maybe you might have the sun in the 4th house. So then you would still have some Cancer energy being shined upon and illuminated there. Obviously, I'm in New York City, where I live. I'm at the Hudson River Park, and here we are, just so that you really fully know. Where is it? There it is, right there. Okay, so there's the Empire State. This is New Jersey behind me. That's Jersey City. Okay, and that's the Hudson River. Right? Look at the current. All of those different currents that you see are basically like feelings that Cancer feels. I posted a video on Instagram that I took when I was in Florida of the ocean and the waves crashing into, the shore. And I was looking at this video yesterday, and I was thinking to myself, if Cancer is the ocean, then all of the feelings that it feels are the currents, and the currents that comes into waves, comes as waves into the shore, are the feelings being, expressed, right? They're meeting the earth, the grounding that they need to make sense, right? It's like we don't ever hear the waves crash until it comes in, right? But all the meantime, it's always happening out there. The water is always moving. It's always constant. That current is always flowing. Even when water is in a large body like the ocean or a river, it continues to flow, right? So even in its natural setting, its natural environment, its natural, place where it exists, it still flows. It still filters itself out. If you look at the Ace of Cups, the cup is flowing over, and it is sort of filtering itself out, cleansing itself, the way that any body of water that flows does. If that cup was filled with water that was contaminated or, just toxic, right, poisonous, something like that, then you would be giving energy of let's say Scorpio. Pisces is the weather, right? The weather is always changing, right? It's fickle. It doesn't really know what it wants to be at any given time. All of the water signs are kind of unstable because water itself is unstable, right? Like, even with this water being sort of housed and contained, it still has to flow, right? So it's never going to settle because it knows that it can't. If it does, then it is not going to get anywhere, right? So if you hold on to emotions and you don't allow yourself to acknowledge them, you don't allow them to flow, you don't acknowledge that they're there, then, you have a problem. If you are on a boat in the middle of the ocean and you don't have a sail, then you are or a paddle, right? Then you're definitely relying on the currents to get you to a safe place, right? You're relying on the waves and the water to sort of, guide you along, be sort of like your GPS, give you the right advice to point you in the right direction, right? That's why also Cancer rules like the home, right? Home and family, but then it's not just like the home, like the house that you live in, it's also like the environment that you're in, right? So your home can be any environment that you like to be in consistently, right? Any place where you find stability within that environment. That's why, Cancer is the 4th house in the tarot. The Emperor is the 4th major arcana card. So it's kind of like, you know, the 4th house and the sign that represents the 4s, as the Emperor, Aries, does. It's kind of like, you know, understanding that there has to be stability. There has to be foundation. So since Cancer is the first water sign, it's the first introduction into unstable, I mean, not unstable water, but an unstable element, right? It's interesting because Cancer is cardinal, but it's unstable, right? Like a mutable sign would be. But it's cardinal because it likes to initiate. It likes to make you aware of things, like an Aries would, right? Like the Emperor makes you aware of things. Like anything that has to do with the 4, you are aware of something. So Cancer being the 4th house, it makes us aware of our emotions for the very first time. So they're intense, right? It's kind of like the first time you feel an emotion that you've never felt before. It's almost like you know, it's an extraction, right, of that feeling. Like that feeling is so intense, you know, and that's what your intuition is. Your intuition is like an intense sense that you have that is really connected to, like, you know, the spiritual realm. You know, it's kind of like you have to, no emotion is right or wrong, right? It's a feeling, because it's kind of like that's how you're being affected emotionally. That's how you're responding or reacting to something that you feel like deserves and warrants a response and a reaction, right? Because if we ignored our feelings and we didn't bring any attention to them, then, you know, that would just lead us to doing, you know, maybe toxic things. You know, we'd find other ways to feel like we are, you know, satisfying a need to express, right? We won't express ourselves in positive ways. We'll start expressing ourselves in negative ways, right? You know, alcohol, drugs, right? The sirens are going on, that type of thing. Or just unhealthy people, right? Because, you know, Cancer wants to engage. That energy wants to engage, but it wants to engage in a wholesome, nurturing way, a meaningful way, right? Because our feelings have meanings, right? So we have to kind of express those feelings to people so they can get a sense of where we are coming from. Okay, and water is reflecting, like, right? Water reflects. Like right now that I'm standing here, the sun is shining. We see a reflection off the water. If the sun wasn't shining, the water would be less listening. But I mean, this is the Hudson River, so the water is kind of giving you like a mossy green color. So you may not see a reflection off of this at all. But you know, it's kind of like when you come up a hill. Okay, there's a little bit of a reflection. You see the light there? Anyway, the moon is also a satellite, and it reflects, you know, the light from the sun, and also, you know, energy as well, right? The moon has a pull on us, so we feel its energy as well, just like we feel the energy of other people when we get around them, right? We're all made of, like, you know, 85% water or something like that. So, you know, that's why you have funny feelings when you get around certain people, because they have a certain pull on you. It's like how the moon has a pull on the ocean, right? And how we all respond to that pull that the moon has on the ocean, right? That gravitational pull. Because emotions have gravity, right? They can be heavy at times. They can be light too, but nevertheless, they're always being felt. You know what I mean? And you have feelings when you think of things, when you are just prompted or inspired, right? Like an Aries would, like they just come up, you know what I mean? So that's why Cancer is the 4th house, and it's related to that Emperor energy of, you know, number 4 in the tarot. Also with Cancer season, it has to do with just kind of like trying to deal with your emotional triggers, perhaps. It could be having to be a little bit more considerate of other people's feelings, right? We have to take a little bit of a step back. We can't be like just recklessly connecting and saying things and communicating, right? Because, you know, Gemini taught us how to communicate, right? Great. I'm glad that we learned how to communicate before we learn how to understand our feelings, because I would think that we would want to learn how to understand our feelings so that we then could communicate those. But first we need to learn how to communicate, and then we can focus on how we can express our emotions, because we've got to communicate first. You know, any artist that, you know, has a gift and expresses that gift through its, you know, creative work, it's kind of like, you know, you have to be aware of that feeling. It's like any artist is sort of using their emotions as a tool, right, of expression. Okay, so you also have to be aware of like what you're good at, that you can be creative in, right? Or at least you have to be aware of what creativity is and try to, you know, attach yourself to it in a meaningful way. If you're not the person that's doing the creating, then maybe you can be a celebrator of, you know, creativity, right? A patron of creativity, right? Maybe you can nurture someone else's creativity, perhaps, right? And that's what mothers do with children, right? They nurture their creativity because they know that it is important. It's a very important starting off point for you know, flourishing in life. And that's what your home and your environment and your structures and your foundations do for you. They give you a place to flourish so that you can then go out into the world like an Aries would and show people who you are, where you come from. They can appreciate you for your values, your, you know, all of the things that you have set in place for yourself, so that you can go out there and shine, which is what we're going to be doing after this season when we go into Leo season. Okay, but what else would I say about the moon? The moon has a specific energy with Taurus. It's exalted there, so it's an uplifted energy, you know. Instead of having that Taurian energy of just caring about one's own environment and not really being emotionally, not attaching yourself to emotionally significant things, but rather materially significant things, right? So when the moon is in Taurus, then now we have that energy of like nourishment, right? Fertility, growth, okay? Because the moon is talking about change and evolution, and Taurus is really fixed. So Taurus is talking about keeping things the same. So it's talking about values, right? Meaningful values, right? When the moon is in Taurus, okay? And then it's also talking about the ability to share, right? Because the moon is sharing, we're reflecting, right? Welcoming into a space. So the moon in Taurus is really beautiful. My sister has moon in Taurus. It's funny because I have moon in Cancer. My middle sister has moon in Capricorn, which is opposing my moon. Okay, the moon rules Cancer, and then it is like debilitated in Capricorn. And then my youngest sister has moon in Taurus, so her moon is exalted. I think that my mother has moon in Gemini, which means that the moon is, I think the moon is not so great in Gemini, but it doesn't have a significance like, you know, the moon being in its debilitation, or the moon being in its ruling house, which mine is, or the moon being in the second house, which is ruled by Taurus. Okay, so the moon is significant in those ways. The moon is definitely in its fall in Scorpio, because if it's in its exaltation, it's uplifting in Taurus, then it's in its fall in Scorpio. Okay, so whatever sign a planet is exalted in, the opposite sign is going to be the sign that it's in its fall. Okay, so we're gonna have we already had our Scorpio full moon, so this month we're gonna have our full moon in Capricorn. Now Capricorn is actually my 4th house, which is ruled by Cancer. Which is so funny because it's talking about home life and environment, but then it's also talking about career as well. Now, do I have any placements in Cancer? I do. My moon is there, and it's also my midheaven. My midheaven is at 13 degrees of Cancer, and my moon is at 29 degrees of Cancer. The North Node is in Cancer right now. So this full moon that we're having in Capricorn will be opposing my 10th house of career and success, you know, my place in the world, how you govern your life, right? Because Capricorn does talk about governing and government, rules, regulations, things like that. It's politics, it's politicians, right? Because Capricorn sets the rules and the guidelines, and you know, it's very legislative. So we could probably see some things happening within the government for sure, maybe even like in more places than just, you know, the United States. But you know, Capricorn is kind of like the executive. We have an executive here that doesn't really deserve to be in that position. So this full moon might bring about some changes and some shakeups there. I know that last month the full moon was in Sagittarius, and I think that executive does have a full moon, or have a moon in Sagittarius, and they are Gemini with Gemini rising. So there was a lot going on last month in terms of like Gemini and Sagittarius energy, because our president has all of those placements. Sun, moon, and rising. So yeah, we could probably see another layer of it, right? There could be some completions, some culminations in government with different people that have high status positions, right? Some endings there. Yeah. Anyway, I won't go too far into that. We'll just see what happens around that time. But we do have a new moon in Cancer on July 2nd. And the new moon is kind of like a time for you to come up with, you know, ideas of what you would like to see happen for you. In the place of home and family and environment, and even career, because your home and your family kind of like, you know, build up who you are. They fortify you so that you can go out there and take advantage of, you know, the world and whatever is out there for you to do or be, right? So I think that, you know, it's talking about confidence as well, and will, right? For sure. Will, confidence, creativity, effort, stability, completion, feeling safe, because Cancer is talking about feeling safe as well. Safe in your environment and safe around other people, you know what I mean? But it also, because you have a need to feel safe, then you have a need to protect yourself too, which means sometimes you can put up, you know, armor, right? Like the Cancer shell, okay? Hermit crab, all of that. You could even change homes a lot. I do, as my Cancer moon is at 29 degrees. So it's kind of like, whoa, thrilling. Anyway, but yeah, I'm actually looking for a new place to live. Right now I'm in the Bronx, and I will be looking for a place at the end of the summer. But I think that right now, look, the water has already changed. It's like a little bit more active. But I think at the, you know, the end of the summer, I'm going to move. But this is a good time for me to focus my energy and my manifestations and my visualizations on my new, you know, environment, my new home, my new place. All right, everybody, so I'm gonna leave that there for the full, or not the full moon, but Cancer season video, street talk. So here's a little panoramic view of New York. There's the city, Manhattan, and then we go around, and then that's uptown, up the Hudson River, New Jersey, Jersey City, turning. And we have downtown New York there, right? Financial district. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy Cancer season.